go to one side and talk?
Yeah, let's go somewhere quiet. Let's go to one side. Yeah.
We'll follow
Sorry,
you.
guys.
We'll follow you.
Well, then you'll be a stalker. Let's go to one side somewhere. We'll go there in the corner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said when we get the truth.
So what
we
I'm
have to be
saying,
ready to accept
in
it.
terms of
Mansur, I'd like to
Searching.
challenge you to a debate.
searching for the
Why
truth,
have you been lying about the Christian
it
faith,
has to be
Mansur?
the readiness.
Mansur,
an
why have you been lying
individual.
about the
Yeah.
Christian faith, bro?
If the individual is not ready to
Mansur,
approach this question with sincerity,
say that.
have
Why
the
does Allah say
intention
that you can
to
adopt one of
accept the
creation to be a
truth
son,
wherever it may
Mansur?
be,
Yeah.
then we will not be able to find the right answer. Because imagine now,
Mansur,
someone is trying to save an individual from
why are you running,
a
Mansur?
crime they may have committed or not. A lawyer.
Why am I a coward? I'm
The
right
lawyer is interested in defending his or her client, regardless of whether this person is actually criminal or not.
Why does
Because
Allah
for
say
them,
that he
it's
can
like a
adopt
job and a winning case where the client is offering them a lot of money,
Why does he
and
command
for them
Muhammad
is
to
to
say
establish
that
this
if he
client,
had a son,
remove them from the guilt that they're accused of. Does that make sense?
Don't push, don't push, don't push, don't push. You're pushing. You're pushing. Don't push.
Why are you hurting him?
No one's hurting
You're
him.
hurting him.
Why is he pushing?
Can
Why
you-
is Sam
Can
pushing?
you move away?
No one was pushing until Sam pushed.
Can you move away?
No one was pushing.
This is
No one was pushing. Unfortunately,
He's scared of his
Muslims
faith.
come to Christians and
Because he's
interrupt our
coward.
conversations and they think that they can get away with it. Now, had Lamin not behaved in the way that he had, I
I'm not
wouldn't
interested in
be
you or Lamin.
Great.
I'm not interested in you or
Great,
Lamin.
but I'm
Go
interested
and sort
in
out
you.
your own problems.
Because you go around and you lie
Go
about
and
the
sort out your
Christian
own
faith.
problems.
You
Go and
lie
speak
about the
over there.
Christian faith.
Go and speak over there.
No,
If
because
you think I'm lying, stand up on the ladder and go and tell people about it.
Mansour, I was not pushing until Sam
We'll talk
pushed.
later. You push me. What's your name?
Mansour,
Morris.
you pushed Sam. You started.
So when
You
this
started
happens,
by pushing. No, I was just trying to pass you.
discussion.
I was straight behind you. Why have
So
me?
let's understand that now. Go to your friend and then we'll catch up later. I'll be
Brother,
around.
you're being lied to.
I'll be around.
You're being lied to, bro. You're being lied to.
This is Christianity. This is Christianity.
This
So if
interruption
you move a little
was
bit
brought
further.
to you by Lamin. Had Lamin not interrupted me, I would not be here now. And had Sam not pushed me, there would have been no pushing. Ladies and gentlemen. However, since we're here, Mansour, I've got a question for you.
I'm not interested in you.
Oh, I want to ask you a question.
I'm not interested. Get a life.
So,
okay, let's
why
go for it.
Muslims? Oh, he's
Everything is
running.
recorded, Bob.
running.
Your behavior, everything is
Now we have
recorded.
an
Okay.
I think people are not. There are some very aggressive Christians that interrupting with almost like crushing individuals. So I think, speak to the crowd. Exactly.
Give everyone a bit of space. Stop lying. I'll go this way.
Yeah, I think we need to have a word with the crowd to find out what's happening.
No worries, thank you. Sorry, I've got my bike with me.
This is what you want. You run. You run. The Dawa run. The Dawa run with your people.
Right. So let's have a talk here between ourselves.
They push in violent, they push in people and saying they will push them. Liar. Liar coward.
So this is for the Muslim audience. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Wa ala alihi wa man wala. So this kind of aggressive behavior in Speaker's Corner is nothing new, right? We don't want you Muslims to take this personally and you consider Christians are all alike like this aggressive individual. Christians are not like that. If you go in your everyday life, your neighbor, they're actually good people. They don't behave as fanatic individuals like them. So I really urge you, my Muslim brothers and sisters, do not, while you're watching this, consider this individual or his crew represents the Christian people. They don't. You can still live in tolerance and in harmony and in peace and with goodwill with your Christian neighbor. Right? Do not think individuals like them and the others represent your neighbor, because your neighbor is a good person. Right? So this is an important message for you to understand. Do not feel the rage and the anger when you see your Muslim speaker, brother in Speaker's Corner, is being, with this aggressiveness. We don't care, because we are interested in the truth. So this individual that's trying to interrupt our discussion, it shows the inferiority of his belief system, perhaps, his particular ideology, because he's not able to present it to the people, but he has to come and interrupt someone else. Okay? We're not here to go and interrupt other people. Instead, we would like to invite people to Muslims. And this is what we're saying is, you should do likewise. When at your workplace, at your educational institutions, if you're doing businesses, try to represent yourself as a good Muslim in your words and in your action. When you do that, that itself is a better dawah than what I do here.
You run.
Better dawah than what I do here.
You run.
Because people, as you can see, are only interested in theatrics and rhetoric. For them, it's about winning and running and debating. I'm not interested in any of that.
Debate your Quran. Don't put that.
I'm only,
That is assault.
brother. Why ignore him?
If I did that, you would have these guys on you. Yeah.
What I'm saying is, we are not interested with these hooligans.
I'm not a hooligan. He's just poked me.
Right. So, now this is a message now,
Defend your prophet.
brother.
This
How
is
old
now,
was Aisha when the Prophet Muhammad
this
married
is
her?
now a
How old was
message.
she?
I'm talking, don't interrupt.
How old was she?
This is a message to the Christian
Jesus is the Son
and
of God.
non-Muslim
That's the only way you
audience.
can be saved. Through the blood of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Brother.
Only the blood of the
Brother.
Lord Jesus
My
Christ will
brother.
save you.
Just turn your back to him.
Got a loud voice.
That's it.
Yeah, well, no one
Right.
wants to hear it.
Very loud voice. Only the blood of the
So,
Lord Jesus Christ will save you.
Okay.
imagine this was the nature of preaching. So this is a message to the Christian and non-Muslim crowd, our
Play
audience.
to your cameras. It's speechless comedy. You
Imagine Christ, the Son of Mary, went on preaching like that. You would not want to listen to their message. You would ignore him, saying he is a fanatic hooligan, a bigot. You don't even want to listen to him. So we have to differentiate between the people that you are paying to come here to represent you and your faith, and the real people who can have a discussion with us on an intellectual level, on an academic level. So I think, my Christian community, friends in humanity, you need to sack these people because they're failing to do their job, and offer to someone else who can better represent your faith, in which they can interact with Muslims on an intellectual level in an academic type setting, even here, rather than yelling, pushing, and this fanatical behavior. So your money that you're spending in their Patreon or the subscription, whatnot that you have, I think it's high time that you really realize that you are really wasting your money on these individuals who are doing a very, very bad job on behalf of yourself, representing your faith in Christianity or whatnot. Terrible representation. So, message to the community here, brothers and sisters and friends. If you feel this kind of behavior makes your blood boil and become angry, and you feel some kind of vengeance on whatever, I really urge you to not to come to Speaker's Corner until you can control your anger and build up a higher level of tolerance and patience. If you cannot control this behavior by reacting to provocation and incitement, this is not the place for you. Perhaps you should reconsider where you need to go and do your dawah or inviting people to Islam. Maybe that is not the place. Not every place is suitable for everyone. Some places are more toxic than others. You may also try to find out how to do anger management, increasing patience, and repelling all these things that comes, and be, in a way, humble and tolerant to people's foolishness. If people are a fool, ignore them and forgive them, because that's what they have been somehow indoctrinated. So the message is quite simple. Try to have this place as an open platform in which you can engage in discussions and dialogue in a spirit of peace and harmony and tolerance, not aggressive behavior and fighting. Do not consider yourself like you're a child. You are all adults here. Behave like adults and represent yourself in your community, your faith community or your ethnic community, that you are here not to create tensions and enmity and fighting between communities, but rather we should all be working towards bridging communities together in which we can live in happiness and tolerance regardless of the differences of our faith, because it's a matter of fact that we will not all agree in a faith system, but we need to know how to live knowing that difference. And if you cannot learn about these things, then I suppose you need to do what we call introspection, self-reflection, and find out why are you behaving in a way you are behaving. Speaker's Corner traditionally has been a platform of good exchange of information from each side, you and your opponents. Keep it that way, rather than having problems and fighting and harassment and aggressiveness. So we ask Allah, our Creator, to give us the understanding, all of us, so that we can be better worshippers of our Creator. If we are worshipping our Creator in a wrong concept by ascribing Him a son or a daughter or anything that our Creator will be displeased with, then we need to really work on our own belief system before we try to convince others of that belief. In the day of judgment, when God will be asking you, why did you worship a banana, a rat, an elephant, a human being, a Palestinian? What would be your response? Do you think you will stand in front of God justifying your belief system? You can't do that here in front of us. And yet, in the day of judgment, the judges of all judges, the judge of all judges, the master, the creator of this world, you think you're going to justify your belief? No chance. So wake up, people, before it's too late. Return to your Lord, your Creator, the one and only. This is where the salvation is. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. And appropriate tools with any limitation and so on. So if you want to say, look, I am going to approach this question using the methodology of science, then the question will lead you to a domain where it's only naturalistic answers and not supernatural answers, because science doesn't deal with supernatural. Science methodology is restricted in the natural world. There is nothing beyond the natural world, right? So if you want to employ something that itself is going to be limited in its scope, then it's not going to give you the right answer, because the right answer may be you need a tool which is appropriate for that, not necessarily appropriate for this question. Good.
Yeah, like exploring.
Right. So we want to know, okay, who the Creator is. The Creator must, by itself, possess certain characteristics. One of them is the ability to create and bring about creation, because that's the fact that you acknowledged the first thing, that there is this creation. So the Creator has the ability to create this creation, that has power. The next question you should be asking is, what is the source of this power? Did the Creator have inherent power, or it was given to Him? When I say Him, it's just using a language, but necessarily God is a male or a female. So this power must be not acquired, it will be inherent. If something is inherent and the Creator is not given that power, could anyone limit that power? No limit. So it will be unlimited in its scope, in the power.
Yeah.
That's why the concept that you find that the creator is all powerful. He is someone who is that nothing is against what we say, Inna Allah ala kulli shayin qadir, is he has power over all things. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
He has power over all things. Nothing can overpower him in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
Okay. So this kind of recognition on understanding of the creator is based on the reality of this world, and then we say, okay, if this is the case, we expect there has to be a creator who is going to be necessarily possessor of power like that. The creation itself demonstrates that there is wisdom employed in the creation. There's planning, as you said. I'm taking your words and how to approach with this kind of the pre-understanding of the reality that you have already.
Yeah.
There seems to be design.
Yeah.
There's design automatically gives you the picture of planning and wisdom and knowledge and all of that thing. So the creator must possess inherently knowledge. Knowledge of things that he's created. Yeah. And the Quran says, in fact, is what Latif al-Khabir. This is ayah in the, I think, Surah Al-Yasin, something like this. أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ وَهُوَ اللَّطِيفُ الْخَبِيرُ. Would he, the one who created, would he not know the one who was created? He is the most subtle, the all aware. So the one who created something, like for example, if someone who's, imagine the engineer or the designer who made that bottle, does he not know? Exactly.
Yeah.
So the creation itself portrays that the creator has knowledge, and that knowledge, of course, because of that necessary conditions of our world, there has to be this independent, necessary being who has no limits in his existence, in his attributes, and so on. Because otherwise, you'll be asking, why is there a limit to someone who is always present in existence?
Yeah.
Because there cannot be a creator who began to exist.
Yeah.
What began that creator in existence? So there has to be something that exists always, and that will be that creator. So you're using now the rational process of deciphering what you expect the necessary attributes or qualities of this creator to be. All-knowing, all-powerful, having the power and ability, and of course, self-awareness, as you say, a being who is alive. Otherwise, how would something be created if someone was not aware? I mean, if you're not aware of yourself, can you write poetry? You can't. Let's give you a mundane example.
Yeah.
So the creator is, of course, self-aware.
Yeah.
And with his awareness and knowledge and power and ability and will, he created this universe. This universe didn't come into existence without the creator willing it.
Yeah.
Like, you can be powerful, but you don't will. Like, imagine now, you are an individual who have a knowledge about what you have learned and so on. Say you know how to write a letter to someone, your friend or your employer, whatever.
Yeah.
If you don't will to write a letter, this letter will never be written. You have to will it. Whether you program your computer to write it for you, or ChatGPT and take good instructions, whatever, or you write it by yourself, by hand or typing it. You need to will to do that.
Yeah.
This universe being created has to be willed by the creator, otherwise it's not going to proceed. Yeah?
We don't really carry.
So we've already identified that this creator has necessary qualities of having the ability, the power, the knowledge, the self-awareness, and the will. Next question is, if this is the case, so we need to now see reflection of this creator in this world and see whether religions that talks about it matches these qualities of this creator.
Yeah.
If a belief system talks about a creator which doesn't even know that he exists, well, like, did he create the universe or not? Who knows? The books in Hinduism, the Veda, actually have some shloka like this. I mean, whether the gods created this universe or not, do they know? They have an agnostic position, that you know that cannot be from the creator. The one who created must know that it's created. So a book which says that, does God know that he created the universe or not? Did he create, or who created it? That you can disregard, because that doesn't make much sense. The big question is now, out of all of these things, there are many religions that talks about many gods, not one God. Now, how do we decide whether the creator is one or many? Without going into the books and reading everything and so on. You can use your reason again to see, what if there were more than one creator, more than one absolute being? What do we expect? There's always going to be conflict of will. Absolute being means, imagine we are both powerful, we're not all powerful, and we have abilities to do things, and we are independent of each other, because I'm not dependent on anyone, because why would I be dependent if I'm by myself? Likewise you. So the creator, who is always existence, who is he going to be dependent on? No one. You'll be independent. If there are more than one independent beings like this is where the problem is going to be, conflict of will. Imagine you and I on a car with two independent steering wheels and controls. You decided by yourself to take the car this way, and I decided to take the same car, we're on the same car, that way. Where's the car going to go?
It's going to stay here.
Right. So this universe, if there were more than one creator, there will be conflict of will. One creator will say, now I want heavy rain. The other one says, no, I don't want rain here. I want Maurice and Mansur to have a nice chat without an umbrella. They're going to fight over each other because they're all powerful. And there will be chaos in the universe. Imagine, one says, no, I want the earth to be destroyed. Other one, no, I want the earth to stay still. That's what the Quran says. If there were more than one creator, more than one ilah, or one deities, they will try to overcome with each other and try to overcome their creation, take away from their creation and so on. That shows the idea of more than one God, a polytheistic concept, is not really rational. It's not intellectual, it's not reasonable, it's not rational. So our approach to filter down, to navigate where lies the truth, should be now looking into monotheistic belief systems. Because that seems to be a good candidate for us to examine. Polytheism, clearly, it doesn't make sense. Okay? So what are the monotheistic religions that has the scripture or a prophet or a messenger or someone who's representing them in terms of being the recipient of the message? There are not that many. Okay? So you can see Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and some other comes later, which is an offshoot of other things. These are the three candidates. Okay? Christianity and Judaism, I mean, if you think about it, they do say there's one God, but what do they actually say about this one God?
Well, with Christianity, I know they have the three persons, not as well read in Judaism.
So if you start reading Judaism and what they believe, like I can ask you to start reading the Talmud and see what they say about, like, what is like an advanced Jew having quarreling with and so on and so forth. So we started a stream on DawahWise, our channel. You can read about it. You will consider, like, you'll be surprised, how do they have this kind of belief system? But that's unfortunately what they have. Okay? So they're making God is like an advanced Jew. He studies the Torah, he debates the rabbis, and he often loses. That doesn't represent a picture of God, even though he's supposedly one God. Okay? So it is polluted in the understanding of who the one God is. The idea this is one God, if you now still see in the Torah, which is what I was remnant of, that he created the heavens and the earth in 6 days, and he rested on the seventh. But it doesn't stop there, he says, and then he got refreshed. Now that's where the problem starts. I mean, I can understand you ceased from creating, so resting could be just mean cessation of activity. But getting refreshed, does God get tired, is the question. So the idea that God needs refreshing implies this some kind of tiredness. We need refreshing. That's why we sleep. Sleep refreshes us, rejuvenates us from all the works and activities that we do, and we become refreshed afterwards. Our brain relaxes and so on. When we eat food after being hungry and so on, it refreshes back, brings back energy. That's because how weak we are. God, a necessary being, cannot get tired in any way, shape or form. So the concept of refreshing doesn't come into play. But that's the description we find. So that we need to start questioning, why is that description there in such a holy book like the Torah? Another example. The same book says he created human beings and So this human being, very wicked at one point, had destroyed them by flood, save a few. And then he made a covenant. He says, this is a sign of my covenant between you and the people to come after, that from now on I am not going to destroy man wholesale again. And as a sign of my covenant, I'm going to put a rainbow in the sky, and when I'm about to destroy mankind again, when I'm about to inflict punishment again, when I look at the clouds and I see the rainbow, it will remind me, God. It will remind me as God the covenant that I made. Does that tell you that God is a all-knowledgeable God, or a forgetful God that needs reminding by looking at the sky and sees the rainbow and then get reminded? So these languages again are not really appropriate for a concept of God. So the question is now, has this gone corruption of the text? One possibility is it was pure monotheistic, and this is where, you know, it would make sense at a certain time in the past, in certain cultures or tribes or communities, you expect this one creator to convey that message that he is one and he created people for a reason. That should remain throughout the human history. The message should be all abundant. And we actually see that, but we see this through embellishment and exaggerations and corruption, where ultimately there seems to be one God, but that one God concept is corrupted with other attributes that strips him from his majesty and sovereignty and or his unique almightiness, by limiting him, by giving him attributes which are deficient and imperfect. Okay? So what's left now is Islam between those religions. And if you consider Islam, you will see your heart and mind automatically resonates with the concept. It says God is one and only and unique, absolute and independent, self-sufficient, doesn't give children birth to, is not born. There is nothing like unto him in whatsoever way. Concept makes sense? Is that what you expect God to be? There's no one like him. And yet God is the one who sees and who hears, because he created us. About him, how would we know unless he tells about himself? He says he created heavens and the earth in 6 days, and no fatigueness touched him. Neither sleep nor slumber. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. No sleep or slumber touches him. Okay? So this description seems to be a direct response and engagement with the concept that the earlier Judeo-Christian people and community had, in which they corrupted the message of God. So it's corrupting and saying, no, indeed, yeah, of course God is one. Your God, and just Quran commands to say to the people that your God, God of the Arabs, God of the Muslims, and your God, the Judeo-Christian God, is one God. And that one God is with those qualities and characteristics. So when we now start looking at it, okay, Quran talks about monotheism, okay? Tick mark, because now I can see this is monotheistic. Next question is, how do I know this book is from God? What does it say? Does it actually give me some kind of pointers, evidence, arguments, signs that it's from God? What about the person that's giving to? Is he really a prophet or is he an imposter? Is he a fake prophet who claimed to be, I am a prophet of God? We need to really critically analyze them and see whether this individual indeed is speaking the truth, or is he a liar, or he could be a deluded individual who thinks he has received revelation. Because if we look at someone who claims to receive information from God, either deliberately is lying and knowing that he's a fake, so he's lying knowingly, or he's deluded, thinking that he's a prophet of God, or he's sincere in his claim, truthful. Is there any other stance that we can put an individual who claims to be?
I believe so.
Yeah. So when we examine whether he's a fake prophet or not, then we can see, okay, if he's claiming to be God, what was his motive? Oh, sorry, from God, a prophet, what was his motive? Because people make things, say things to achieve some benefit, some gains. So what was his motive? Was his motive some kind of political, material benefit, where he wants money, wealth, power, kingship, women? What did he want? At one point, actually, it was all offered to him. If that was his goal, that he wanted to be the leader. He wanted to be the king of the Arabs. He wanted to be the most wealthy. He wanted to be the most rich. He wanted to be the man who had all the women at his side. Whenever he wants, he just names them and they come to him. Okay? The leaders of Mecca, polytheistic in the nature, when he was calling people to worship one God and he was not backing up from that claim, and they realized he's not going to stop, they once offered him and said, look, what do you want? Do you want this? As I said, we will make you the king. We'll make you the richest among us. Name the woman that you want. Now, if he was the one who was behind that motive, like he said, now he's got it, he's achieved his aim, he would have taken it and said, that's it. He rejected all of that. He says, at one point he says, even if you give me the sun in one hand and the moon on the other, I will still not stop from calling to one God and worshipping this one God. So he did not accept this kind of political, your physical desires, your ego, and so on and so forth. What else is left? Okay, maybe he wants.
Someone will enter a place and see a prophet with his companies. He's asked, which one of you, Muhammad? Because he's sitting with them, it's like a normal cloth, not in the center, not on anything. Yeah. He don't know which one is Muhammad. He's humble between his companies.
Yeah. If someone is really a fake and imposter, he wants to make a name of himself. Yeah. He wants to be a celebrity, a pop star, like in our days. Yeah. He would have been, wearing the most, luxurious clothes and being treated by people, in a way like a king and so on. Guess what? Once he was walking, I'll come to your example, brother. Once he was walking and his students, his companion were sitting by, and they stood up out of respect. He said, no. Don't stand up. No respect from me. Like what people do in some parliaments or in school and respect. He said, no. Don't elevate me like that. So the example you gave, for example, he could not even distinguish like who's the prophet, because he was just plain like everyone else. In fact, how did he live his life? When he died, we would have expected living in palaces, left palaces with wealth and all this jewelry and treasures, like a billionaire, trillionaire, whatever. But when we look at the history, we find that he had maybe a pot to drink water from, maybe a brick where he was laying his head as a pillow, maybe a pot another with some grains of food, or maybe nothing. That's it. Yeah. A mattress made of, date leaves. He could have all the wealth he needed, because if he said something, they will bring him even the throne of Caesar. So this is how he was commanding, because people believed in him. Yeah. But that's how his life is. Just like his followers afterward, when the Jerusalem, the key was about to be given to the Muslim, because the Muslims have now conquered Jerusalem. Okay, the key to Al-Aqsa was to be given. They wanted to give it to the Khalif. So the Khalif said, okay, he made his way. How did he come? Is the whole his army? No. He brought with him one individual with him who will attend to his needs. Like nowadays, like you have an attendant, right? Yeah. So they had one mount, not even two mounts, one mount. So what they did, they said, you know what? It's a long journey. We will take in turns. So you sit on the mount, and I take the rope and I walk, and we'll do in turns. Yeah. The Khalif, the leader of the Muslims. Yeah. Imagine if people, anywhere, any leaders would do that nowadays. No one would do that. What happened was, when they approached towards Jerusalem, they're already the turn for the attendant. He is already on the mount. He would have said, like, let me come down now. He says, oh, it's your turn. Your turn. You carry on. So they carried on, and now they're here in the congregation of all the people who are handing over to the Khalif, and they're speaking to the person on the mount. Yeah, Khalifatul Muslimin, the leader of the Muslims. And says, no, this is your Khalif. That's how Islam inculcated to people the humility and humbleness of how to be leader of the people that you are responsible for. Okay, not like be like a king in such which, like this. Yeah, Allah does not love those who are those proud, boastful individuals like that. Never. Allah loves people who are humble, to show humility. So the Prophet, of course, lived his life in this such kind of it's like poverty, when he didn't need to. He could have just got all the wealth. What did he want? Did he want to unite the Arabs? Maybe that's what his goal. Some people are fed up with conflicts, divisions. Maybe he wanted to unite all the Arabs together. He saw that he could do that, and then he said, okay, maybe if I claim to be a prophet, I can bring them together. So what was he doing instead? If this was the case, he was saying, look, you Arabs, look, you see this woman that we're talking about, Maryam, the mother of Christ? God chose her from the best of all the women of the world. How would the Arab feel? What? A Jewish woman, the best of all the women, they would start fighting him and say, the unity of Arabs, the unification would not work because he's praising someone else like this. So many examples like this which shows if it was the case, he's doing a very bad job. So it wasn't to unite the Arabs or liberate the Arabs from this. What if could be maybe he was okay, there's no political gain, materialistic gain, nothing to do with reform and so on.
Not for kingdom.
Maybe he was deluded, sincere but deluded. There are many people like that who sincerely think, I'm the king of England. Sincere but deluded. How do you expect a sincere, deluded person to behave and act? They're not going to come and say, ask me any questions, I will answer. Anything. History, what was going to happen in the future, the nature of this world. How would they know? They're going to make mistakes. Because imagine now, I think I am a prophet, I'm sincerely thinking, ask me a question. You said, okay, tell me about Dhul Qarnayn, the two horned ones. Tell me about the spirits. How would I know? Because they know I was unlettered, not learned, reading and writing or anything. I've never been to school because I grew up among them. The Prophet grew up among the people and they knew that he did not learn how to read or write or study the scriptures of any books or anyone. So now he's telling me, okay, and he's going to answer all your questions. And he's saying, you know what? Yeah, the Romans have been defeated, but they will be victorious again. Bid'a sinin, 3 to 9 years. How is he predicting a conflict between two superpowers, the Persian Empire and the Byzantine Empire, where the Romans, the Byzantines, have been defeated in the nearest or the lowest land, fi adna al-ard, the Quran says. But he's saying, because he's bringing the Quran, they will be victorious soon, within this time period. Of course, he lived longer than that. It's more possible, more likely, that there's a likelihood that he could have got it all wrong if it was just a guesswork. And then he will be exposed, a deluded individual trying to claim to know the future. This happened exactly like that. And many examples like this, he was saying, you did not know this before. No one came to contradict him. Because he was giving information what they knew that they had no clue about all these things. He was saying about some individual, Tabbat yada Abi Lahab. Perish the hands of Abi Lahab. He and his wife will be the carriers of these things in the hellfire and so on. Giving the fate of two individuals, what will happen to them in the future? What if Abu Lahab came in the open and said, I declare and I witness that there is no God worthy of worship and you are the messenger of God. As a Muslim, then he falsified the Quran that he brought, claimed to be from God. This individual had 10 years and more to falsify the Quran by just saying, even as a hypocrite, say it in your mouth, but in your heart, remain pagan.
He had the chance.
He had the chance. What stopped him from 10 years from doing that? And he died in that disbelief. So what the Quran brings, as the Prophet, as a mouthpiece brought this Quran, does not reflect that someone is actually deluded, that sincerely believes what it is, because this information is not possible for someone to bring like that. He even says, look, bring a chapter like unto the Quran. A whole book or 10 chapters like it, or even one book, one chapter like unto it, one surah like unto it. This man is illiterate, they know. And he's saying, I have brought something that you cannot even imitate it. And just imagine someone who doesn't know anything about astrophysics and coming up and says, yeah, that's wrong. You know the equation they're talking about in there? It's wrong. And then you'll be like, how can you do that? So the nature of the challenge is so profound like that, when the Quran challenges the people who were themselves excelled in poetry. They were masters in the language at that time. When they describe women with their poetry, a particular woman will fall in love with that woman. If they describe some sadness, you'll be crying. If they describe in their poetry about bravery, you will feel so proud you will even die for whatever. This is the nature of how they would motivate and move people emotionally with their eloquent words. And he's challenging them, bring something like it, and what happened then? No one is able to bring something like it, not even today. What is the uniqueness of the Quranic message, the challenge that no one can bring something like this Quran? It's called the inimitability challenge of the Quran. Okay?
It didn't add anything or any new word. All of them same as the Arab how they speak.
Yeah. So not this Arabic language, but the Quran came in a structure, in a way that defied their conventional usage. To give you an example, how it's why rather than how, it's impossible for them to imitate. When the Quran says Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, brother, you'll be surprised to know that they did not speak like this. They never said Alhamd. They would say Hamdan Lillah, with what it means is all praise to the Lord of all the worlds. God, Allah, to all the Lord of all the worlds. So the word in Arabic, Hamd, is to praise someone, to be grateful to someone. And there's a definitive article saying Alhamd means all praises, right? With a definite article. The Arabs in their poetry, they were never accustomed in using their poetry with this particular word in the beginning of the sentence like that. So to them, and how can I say that? It's not something I can. They can say Ala Raita Sha'ri. They can bring something like this, but not in this form. And then the Quran says this Rabbul Alameen, Lord of all the worlds. The Arabs only knew one alam. For them, there is no alameen, more than one world. Like, how can I even speak like that? Just like globalization. Mention the word globalization to people 500 years ago, they would say, what are you talking about? Globalization. It doesn't exist in the dictionary, in the vocabulary. But the Arabs knew alameen, world, it's a plural form of this word alam, even though they did not have that plural form in their vocabulary. But the Quran employed it, so that people should try to imitate something of that construct. And they fail because they could not in everyday language. Like when I say, I am speaking to you, you know what I mean? If I say I is speaking to you, you'd say, what kind of language is that? I is. You're not going to speak like that. So the Quran brings linguistic convention, which is uniquely different from their particular conventional. That's why the Quran is not like any of the 16 bihars of the Arabic poetry. Al-Rajas, Al-Tawil, Al-Khafif, Al-Madid, Al-Bahr, all the Bahr, None of the unique styles of poetry, because poetry has rhymes and meters. Quran is unlike any of their known type of poetries. So how can they bring something like it? Because all they know is those 16 forms. Okay? So when the Quran challenged them, they were incapacitated to imitate and meet that challenge. And that's why many people, even though when they heard it, they say, "Laysa hadha kalamul bashar." This is not the words of a human being. They immediately could recognize. And on top of that, when they knew that he is known to be an illiterate person growing up among them, they realized this is something unique. He must have got this from somewhere. Obviously, he cannot be from another human being. And then they're saying, this is saying, Tanzilun min Allah, Tanzilun min Rabbil Alameen. This is a revelation from the Lord of all the worlds. Revelation, a scripture. This is not the statement or sayings of a poet. And the Quran says, وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ. It is not appropriate or justified that he speaks, because the poets always exaggerate things. Like I said, you will fall in love with that woman when they're described. Actually, she's not even like that. Okay? But they exaggerate in their beauty and so much and so forth, because that's how they see it, because beauty is relative, right?
Yeah.
So they see a woman and they see as the most beautiful woman in the world, and they will describe her in such a way that this is what it is. But in reality, she may not be. Someone else will objectively see her. How can you fall in love with her? But that's because of relative understanding of what beauty is. So when we're talking about this relative nature of things, the Quran does not in any way exaggerate things. Let me give you some examples. When people speak, they will say, oh, you're like a lion, you're like this, right? Referring to people's braveness and so on.
Yeah.
Quran instead gives you imagery and examples which are from real world.
Yeah.
It says, for example, I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. It's like those who don't believe in God, their state is like them, that there are layers of darkness in the ocean, one above the other, okay? And if he were to put his hand through, he would not even see his hand, not be able to visualize it, okay? This is a bahrun lujji, okay? Now we realize that actually we do learn now that in the oceans, the light doesn't penetrate all the way to the bottom of the ocean. Reflects back, the more it goes, reflects back. And maybe a few hundred meters and so on, exists total darkness after that. And that's why we need to take our own lights. And that is why the very bottom of the oceans, there are creatures, fishes, they have their own light. Really, they have their own light. You need to really watch those documentaries.
Yeah.
They have their own lights where they go around seeing it. Yeah. Now, the Quran says there are layers of darkness, and it goes to a point where you can't see anything. This is recent knowledge based on our diving deep without, with the aid of diving gears and so on and so forth. Because people thought that, you know, it should be like that. You should be able to see it. And when the Quran talks about how there are waves after waves and so on, it's giving an analogy of a disbeliever, but giving an analogy from the real world.
Yeah.
And it's saying there are waves toppled with waves, and above there are clouds. Why is he giving the imagery? So there are waves, on top of that there are waves, and there are then clouds. We know where the clouds are, we know where the surface oceans are, surface of the oceans, there are waves, but it's saying there are actually waves even in the order below that. Now we do know there are interoceanic waves. You can't see with your own eyes. If you go in space, the satellite, you can see it. He's giving an example in imagery, which is again, a modern phenomena is amazing. How did he know? But that's besides the point. The example I'm giving is, he's not exaggerating anything. He gives an example of those who are disbeliever again, their state is like this. Their hearts are so constricted as if they are they are ascending to the sky. Hearts feel so constricted. What do we know? That's a real imagery. When you go above the high altitude, you lack of oxygen, you feel your chest constricted. The examples of Quran talks about the punishment of those people who reject God. When they are being punished and the fire is roasting them, God will recreate. Okay, let me stop there to understand the analogy very clearly. Once people are being punished in hellfire, someone might say, oh, you're going to burn me? Once I have my burning done, I'm okay. You know why I'm okay? Because all my nerve endings that causes me to feel pain are burnt. I will no longer feel any pain anymore. I'll be okay. Because that's what happens when you have 3rd-degree burn, very severe burning, where you can actually put a knife through it so you won't feel anything. Yeah. Apart from some other pressure receptors and so on, but not the pain receptors, because all burnt. When the skins are burnt properly, proper burning, you won't feel the pain anymore. But the Quran says, look at the example like that, God will recreate them fresh skin so that they may feel the punishment. Why fresh skin? Fresh skin, fresh nerves. Feel the pain over and over again.
Yeah.
So this kind of imagery is not just an embellishment, an exaggeration of reality. It's showing you something like, in this case, a threatening of hellfire for those who reject God out of their arrogance and stubbornness, and at the same time proving the threat with the evidence that this is how the mechanism is going to be. Many examples like this. So where the Quran uses imagery from the real world. Real world. So this is not like the words of a poet, where the poet exaggerates, lies, and say things which is untrue. Quran is unlike that. That's why they cannot imitate it, because you have to then imitate the Quran in those kind of imageries, and they are not accustomed to it. So maybe someone can today, but still the construct is such that you cannot use this construct, because you don't use this construct in every language. Quran came in a particular construct which is unique to itself. That's what is stopping from people imitating it. It's an objective challenge because it's a construction, the tarkeeb of the linguistic aspects of stylistics of the Quran that prevents from people. So coming back to this point. So he brought something that cannot be imitated. Information of the historical past, which they could not reject. Now some of the things we realize, for example, how the Quran talks about some of the pharaohs claim to be God, the Most High. We lost the knowledge of hieroglyphics. The Arabs didn't know. Even the people who opposed to Prophet Muhammad, they didn't know. But when the Quran talked about it, at that time they may have not known, but today we do know. How did the Quran decipher hieroglyphics? So he brought something that really shows this one is the knower of the historical past, knows the future, what's going to happen, because he's prophesying the example I gave you about the Romans and their defeat, that they will soon be victorious. How does he do that? That does not reflect someone who's really sincerely, because it is not within his capacity, even in his sincerity, to bring something like this. That's why the Quran says, قُلْ لَا إِنِ اسْتَمَعَتِ الْإِنسُ وَالْجِنُّ. Even if the jinns or human beings were to come together to produce something like it, لَا يَأْتُونَ بِمِثْلِهِ. They would not. Yeah, and the Quran says, like, if they want to try, but they will not. They will never be able to meet this challenge, but fear the fire whose fuel is man and stones. Okay, this chapter number 2, Surah 2 of Ayah 23 or something like this. Okay, so now you find the product that he brought defies him being an imposter, defies him being someone who's deluded, bringing information like this, but it stands to a point where we need to seriously ask ourselves, how do we explain this phenomenon? How do we explain this phenomenon? He seems to represent, in fact, he demonstrated to his community to be a truthful and a reliable individual, because they actually they gave him that title, As-Sadiq Al-Amin, the most truthful, the most reliable one, the truthful and the reliable one. That was his title. They honored him and respected him like that. So his character was never in a question. So to say that he was lying when you can't find any lies within it, only thing he's saying, stop worshipping your false gods, things that you have crafted by your hands, but worship the one and only God. Why shouldn't you? So the objection seems to be emotional one, not intellectual.
Yeah.
So now once they really to come to the justification of how do we then explain this phenomena that we observe if we don't accept him as a prophet of God. Yeah. We are ready to accept him as the most knowledgeable individual of history, the most important person to have military stratagem, the one who seems to predict the future quite well accurately, the one who seems to have a good sense of morality and governance for structuring a country and running a country, uniting the people under one umbrella and so on. But yet we have a problem with him accepted as a prophet. He's simply saying, say to them, I am no more than a prophet. I am no one. I have no power. I have no knowledge, no secrets of the keys to the unseen. I only know what God reveals to me. I only know what God reveals to me. I'm only a man like you. The only difference is that God gives me wahi, except that he inspires me to tell you that your Lord, your God is one, and then the Quran is being that
Even
revelation.
Aisha, when someone said bad thing about her, the Quran came after 2 weeks. If he is not a prophet, he will say
There was an
next day.
incident.
Yeah.
There was an incident where, you know how they were traveling in caravans or camels, and they would mount a camel. So his wife would be in a camel, of course, with this. We call it like a clothing and so on. So people can't see what's in there and so on and so forth. But it's the wife of the Prophet. They're going there. So at one point, when it was stopped, she was responding to the call of nature. But people thought she was already there, up, because she was so light. Okay, and then
She was like,
they left. Later on, they realized like she's not there. Of course, she stood there saying God. So eventually, one individual was sent to look out for what people have left in the caravan. This was the mechanisms. Like an individual would go and check if there's anything that people dropped it and so on and so forth. And he found the wife of the Prophet, okay, the mother of the believers. And of course, then he accompanied her safely to the caravan again. Some point later, people were making rumors like, oh, something's going on between this individual and the Prophet. A huge insult to the wife of the Prophet and the Prophet himself. Now, he could have, if he was a fake imposter, a fake individual, he could have just said, look, God has revealed to me that she is okay. Nothing happened. He could have manufactured these verses. Nothing. Days went by. Suffering, all of these things himself. He couldn't say anything because people are spreading the rumor. What can he do? How does he stop people from saying? There's nothing he can do because he wasn't there. He was already there and she was left behind. So who can defend her honor?
And even the Prophet said to her, if you did something, ask for forgiveness. He don't know.
Even said like, I don't know what happened. Then God, after a while, revealed revelation, declaring her innocence and so on and so forth. That time of grief, anguish, suffering was unnecessary if it was a fake individual. That shows how genuine, of course, he is, his sincerity, and then later on God relieved him. In fact, when he received first revelation, and then there was a gap, there's a fatra, there's an intermittent where he was eager and like, why isn't God talking to me anymore? Why isn't God revealing more information? A fake individual will just keep on manufacturing verses, but he wasn't. He was feeling that, so much grief in here, and then God says, God has not abandoned me. God has not abandoned you. And God comforts him by saying this revelation and so on. So his life, the Quran, the history, all demonstrates he's a sincere individual, that he's not someone to be even, in assessment, can be ever taken to be an imposter, a fake individual. Okay? Sincere to be a prophet of God. So that's why when you examine all this belief system, monotheistic belief system, Quran stands out, Islam stands out, and it resonates with your heart and your mind. The Prophet demonstrate him to be a prophet because of proof and evidence that he brings. Quran with his falsification test, as well as many miracles he's done. Of course, you were not there, so it's very difficult for you to perhaps assess. You can only understand from history what Muslims claim that what he has done. Like when he fed from his finger, for example, how many people he drinks, or from one bread, like we hear from Christ what he did. Similar kind of things he did, fed hundreds of people, where impossible to do that. These kind of miracles, people often say, look, I wasn't there. I'm not sure how I'm going to understand that. Moses parted the Red Sea, I didn't see it. That's why we bring the Quran, the living miracle, which is in front of you. You can actually see what it says and what it does. And now if you see this miracle, the evidence in front of us, then what is then becoming an obstacle for us to say, okay, I've made an assessment. This turns out to be the truth. That's how you should approach this truth. So I've given you, I think, enough information for you to go and reflect and do your investigation on Islam, and make your judgment call. Because at the end of the day, if we die in a state other than in Islam, not accepting Islam, not submitting, surrendering to our God, not surrendering to His will, paradise is not going to be open to us. We have to have the key to paradise. Make that declaration that there is no one worthy of worship and Muhammad is His messenger, and show that commitment in showing gratitude to God in worshipping Him. Then you become the recipient of His mercy, which is the key to paradise, and you become the recipient because He promised those who believe and those who do righteous deeds, God has promised them paradise of eternity, rivers flowing underneath, this tranquility, this contentment, this joy, this belief for those who believe. But that's the condition. So you need to make that step, that approach and that commitment. If you don't do that, then in the day of judgment, who is going to save you? I can't save you, he can't save you, she can't save you, no one can save you. We can't save ourselves, because all we would have then is what we believed and what we did, our faith and our actions. If we didn't have the right faith and the correct actions, we are doomed for failure and punishment in the hereafter. And it is not a temporary punishment. Hellfire, if you reject God, if anyone who rejects God, associate partners with God, is no coming out of it. وَمَا هُمْ بِخَارِجِينَ مِنْهَا. Quran says they will not come out of it. It's not a long time. They will never come out of it, those who associate partners with God. But some people who are Muslims, maybe they do bad things and God punishes them and cleanses them from the punishment because through His justice, but they will eventually return to paradise. We don't want to be in a state where we are arrogant, stubborn individuals ascribing a partner to God, because atheism is like that. You are being a mushrik in that sense, where you don't say God is there with your Lord, but you think you're your own God. You're the one who is there. You rule or live your life by your own principles, not the principles of God. That's associating a partner with God. Instead of following His will, you made yourself an ilah, an object of devotion and reverence and so on and so forth. So you have to, Maurice, ask yourself, what do I do next? Having the information given to me, I need to process the information and put it into action. Do I have my time? Maybe in my 70s, when I'm retired, maybe I'll look into it. Do you have the guarantee when you're going to die? No. No one. We all can die next minute, tomorrow, the year after. No one knows. Our life is all fixed. Everyone has a fixed life. When the angel of death appointed to take our life comes, no one can delay even for an hour or a second. That's it. That's how it is. God has given us this appointed time, and we need to fulfill our obligation within that time period. So if we know the truth and we don't accept it, then we cannot justify our negligence in accepting and following and showing that commitment in worshipping God. That's why it's a huge risk and a huge gamble. So this is point I always emphasize. If you assess and you know the truth, don't delay it thinking, oh, I need to think about my family, how they're going to react. Maybe my family said, oh, what's happened to him? He's been brainwashed. He's been indoctrinated. He's been groomed. Ask yourself, is your parents going to save you from the punishment and hellfire? No one can save us. In fact, the Quran says, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مِّنْهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ شَأْنٌ يُغْنِيهِ. On that day, the man will flee. يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ. Man will flee literally from his brother. When his brother is about to defend him, he will flee on that day. وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ. He will flee from his mother and father, and from his companions, from his wife, from his consort, whatever that is. Everyone will have their own selves, talking about like who's going to save on that day. No one else can save on that day. So this is why it's so important to understand the day of judgment is when you will be standing in front of your Lord by yourself. No one that you thought that you are going to embarrass them by accepting this truth, like, oh, you become a Muslim, are you okay? Oh, you become an Arab. Many of the things people have this, I'm thinking like, it's embarrassing. How am I going to become a Muslim? All of these things people will consider me. They are not going to help you on that day of judgment. They themselves will be saying, how am I going to be saved? So, if this is the case, then why should we delay when we recognize the truth? The only point when people delay is thinking, oh, it's not you. Someone else is trying to prevent you. You know what? Take your time. Learn a bit more. Learn what are the rules of getting married, and so all these things about.
You'll go deep.
There is no end to learning.
Yeah.
If you think that I'm going to learn enough and enough, more and more and more, you'll never learn enough. As I mentioned earlier, also today, that even our scholars are learning every day.
Yeah.
There's nothing to learn. Do you know how many things to learn? The Quran is an ocean of knowledge. Okay? The Quran talks about وَالسَّمَاءِ وَالطَّارِقِ, by the heavens and this knocker, the one who knocks. Knock, 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 knock. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقِ, and what would you say what this knocker is? The Quran says, what would you say? النجم الثاقب, this is a piercing bright star. Oh, so the Quran is describing a piercing bright star by saying it's knocking? The Arabs had no idea, neither did anyone else. That's the case. Today we know they're called pulsars, pulsating stars, which if you were to convert their oscillations and so on, you can hear it's like a knocking sound. Knock, knock. Like this. So the Quran talked about these things. Arabs were quite happy, Muslims were quite happy by knowing that this is a knocker. This star is called a knocker. Now we have learned one layer more of the meaning, that it's actually literally does the knocking sound.
Yeah.
So this they didn't know. If you look at our exegetical works, then they were talked about like this. People with modern technology have learned to know this, and they will say, oh, this is what the Quran is actually referring to. And we think that we know it all. A few hundred years later, people are unraveling another layer of meaning, and so on. And this is how the Quran will always open up to, it's like peeling an onion, right? Layers of meaning, more and more, and each layer is true in its meaning. The profound, because this is divine speech of God. So if it's an obstacle because you think I want to learn more and more and more, you never learn more enough. So that cannot be a reason to say I cannot become a Muslim now, because if you know the truth already, if you know the Quran is from God, has to be. If you know Prophet Muhammad is a messenger of God, and God is the only one worthy of worship, none else, then that is sufficient for you to say, yes, I am a Muslim in my heart, I want to become a Muslim, and then I will take forward and try to learn now. Now I will know, okay, I want to get married, what are the rules and regulations? I want to do business, what are the rules and regulations of doing business? Can I do usury and interest, or can I not? This is called al-dinu al-ma'lumu min ad-din bid-darura. What is known by necessity in the religion, at that point becomes necessary. If you want to do business, you have to know these rules. Yeah. If you want to get married, you have to know the conditions. Are you going to treat your wife like a queen, or are you going to treat your wife like a slave, for example? You need to know. Yeah. Okay? So these are the things you learn as you go along, and you can of course learn more and more what interests you, but it's not going to stop you from becoming a Muslim, this knowledge. So your friends, your families, what they think, your societies thinks you're a weirdo because you become a Muslim, they are not going to be really an obstacle, because these are just an emotional baggage people have, they have to leave behind, because they are not going to save us. Knowledge you can acquire even after becoming a Muslim. So what are the real reasons for stopping? Oh, I'm too young, I have a world out to me, I want to still take some drugs here and there. Quran says no to drugs, because you find out, oh, I want to enjoy myself with the company of women outside marriage, because the Quran says if I do that, it's not going to be allowed. So this could be, your physical egoistic desires preventing you from a Muslim. Many people know the truth, but they feel that the moment they embrace Islam, they can't do that anymore. So they delay it. Maybe, I'll do that and then maybe I'll decide one day. What if you die on that state in committing this actions that God is displeased with, which you knew that, okay, Quran already says no? We will have no excuse. So that's why, Maurice, I'm saying, you are young, intelligent, critical in your mind, thinking, ask yourself. Ask yourself, why am I not a Muslim? Ask yourself that question and see what you answer. The answer that you give is the direction that you need to take. If your heart says yes, why is your tongue objecting? So I leave it to you to ponder and reflect. If you want to know how to become a Muslim, we can tell it. It's easy.
That was really enlightening. I really appreciate that.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Take care. All the best. Any other questions?
No, you've given me a lot to think about. I'm definitely going to have to go home and give it some thought. I haven't really went that in depth about Islam in my life, have I really? I've kind of scratched the surface, but I've never went that far.
We are always here to help you with any question you may have. Okay? I've been coming in the Speaker's Corner for a long time, and if God willing I'm still alive, I will still come because I find this place quite amazing. So you can find me or find my brothers, sisters. You can always ask them. Ask your Muslim friend. If they don't know, ask them, why don't you know? So ask people of knowledge. Who you think you can get the knowledge from, and they will clarify your questions. We have live streams on different Muslim channels like DawahWise. We do Thursday live streams. There are other channels like EF Dawah. They do lots of different days channels. There is Hamza's Den, where he challenges people called the Arena. There are other Yemeni Front. There's so many Muslim channels out there. They're doing online. So if you weren't able to come to Speaker's Corner, you can still, at your own home, on your own comfort, go and join them and say, I had this question. Or you can email us. You will see this social media with all these Muslim channels and things like this. Easy to reach. So there's no excuse saying, I wanted to find a Muslim speak to, I can't. It's always available. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Okay. You take care.
Go now,
you take care.
I'll
be speaking to you. You take care, and I hope to speak to you soon.
And
find out how you how you reflected on it.
I'll probably see you next week. Inshallah. Lovely talking.
Take care. Okay. أقول قولي هذا استغفر الله لكم وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين.